Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with David Yakobovitch, host of the HumAIn Podcast, principal data scientist at Galvanize, as well as professor and keynote speaker. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath Podcast.
Dustin, thanks so much for having me.
So this is a show about kind of becoming a polymath and the journey of that. There's a lot of things we can go into with that idea. Please say hello to the innovators of the audience.
Hello, innovators. Hello, Polymath nerds.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Hello and welcome to the Polymath Podcast. And so share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
Two things people don't know about me, but the one that I think I always have fun with is back in 2017, I wanted to be a rock star tennis player. So I trained with a tennis coach from Serbia, a friend of Novak Djokovic's brother, and flew out to Tunisia and competed in the ITF.
That's awesome.
Great decision that I decided to stay in data science. Let me tell you that.
Well, at least you had that experience and you were able to learn a lot from it, presumably. Yeah.
Absolutely. I learned that I'm definitely someone who is a right-handed tennis player for sure.
What got you into tennis?
I think actually growing up, my dad, one of the sports he wanted us to get into was tennis. It's great cardio, great mental acuity, great at showing persistence. So it's been a fun sport.
Good. And that probably leads into other areas of your life. So starting strong right off the bat, what is the origin of the HumAIn Podcast?
Sure. So I came up with the HumAIn Podcast in late 2018. For me, the inspiration was all about learning, all about education, and about sharing a message that can scale with an audience. For me, I've been involved with math competitions ever since middle and high school, and I've been learning all this technology and helping people learn it themselves, but I don't like having conversations in an intimate setting, only one-on-one. I want it to be an intimate fireside setting where everyone can learn, get inspired, and entertained. So I launched HumAIn. We focused on a hybrid of topics, including AI, data science, future work, and developer education. And the name HumAIn has come from the French word humain, which means to be human.
I love it. It almost seems too you're emphasizing the AI aspect in the name as well.
Exactly. I think where we're moving towards as a world in this fourth industrial revolution is humans augmented by machines. Of course, COVID and coronavirus has thrown us into a COVID quarter of sorts where all that's up for air, but I think we're still moving in that direction.
Definitely. And I think one thing we might touch on a little bit today is the advent, considering we've been on this lockdown, we're going to have this situation where a lot of people are going to have this negative impact, perhaps a recession, something like that, but also the creativity that people can have while being at home and stuck in having all this free time. What can come out of that?
I mean, it's without a doubt, we are already in a recession. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. No matter of how the United States has handled it, about 40 million people full-time are out of unemployment and another 15 to 20 million gig workers, contract consultants who've lost their jobs. So we're in definitely dire straits. But the big conversation that economists say is, are we going to have a W, V, or U-shaped recovery, or even a wave-shaped recovery? I think 2-3 years out, we are going to be in a better place than we are today. It's a little contrarian. Not many people agree with me or believe that right now. I also think cities like New York City and San Francisco, this is very contrarian, are going to be bigger and better than they were today. Most people say we're moving to suburban sprawl. I say bring on the skyscrapers.
Yeah. Urbanism is something that's definitely going to keep evolving, and we're only going to get more and more condensed. I think places like, I live in the Midwest, so I live in a city with little over 100,000 people. It feels like a city, but compared to something like St. Louis or even New York, obviously, it's not anywhere close. But I think even places like where I live are just going to keep getting more urbanized, and we're going to keep going towards that modern path.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, where I grew up in South Florida, I grew up in a small city about a little over 100,000 people, Coral Springs. And, when I started there was no tall buildings. And as I got ready for college, I mean, we literally had 10 to 15 story buildings. And I think that's the future of cities is everything's becoming dense, everything's becoming urban. And it's this network. The network could be with companies like we've seen, like WeWork and Industrious, but it's moving a lot more into a shared environment that's distributed. Much how our conversation today is online, the future of work could be one that's switching between these online and offline modalities.
Yes, I love it. And it's interesting too, because smart cities are becoming more and more popular, but concept for people to adopt. And there's plenty of places like Barcelona or Singapore that are actually applying it towards their daily lives. I'm really curious to see how that's going to evolve, especially considering a recession like this as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've started seeing in Europe is cities that have chosen to open in countries that are choosing to open have gone back to what we've seen in the 16 and 1700s, which is the open street model. Restaurants are outside in the fresh air. People are getting to interact much with that courtyard system that made Europe famous. That discussion's been occurring in New York City about, restaurants saying, let's together open up the sidewalks and close down the streets to cars. I know it sounds very, historic, but it might actually happen. It really just depends on what that phased opening looks like in our state and in other places like St. Louis.
Yeah, definitely. What brought you to go into this data science field? Since it's so wide ranging, what does data science mean to you or in general?
To me, it's all about the scientific method of investigation, of solving problems. Ever since being a mathlete in math competition, I've enjoyed solving problems, usually by hand or with my mind or the TI calculators. But of course, that's evolved over years. We know TI's not gone anywhere. It's still those calculators that you can't even connect to the internet, let alone Casio. Don't get me started with all their competitors. But where we moved as an industry is data has scaled. The cloud has scaled. Systems can be solved now instantaneously with GPUs and TPUs. The space of data is so fun to be in because any problem that you want to solve is possible with different connections.
Yeah.
My start was in the analytics space. It led into predictions and got into consulting as well with data science, and most recently with 2 startups, both of which have gone acquired and public, and now just having fun, continuing to scale businesses and invest.
Awesome. What brought you to Galvanize then?
Yeah, so prior to being a Galvanize, I was scaling enterprise at General Assembly. General Assembly got bought by Adecco. At that point, I got brought into Galvanize to also scale our data science efforts in the enterprise portfolio. So think big banks, big financial companies, big healthcare and telecom companies. I've been helping scale up data science, data engineer, and AI workflow trainings. And in January 2020, we're proud to say that we've been acquired by K-12. Yeah. We're now a publicly traded company in the States.
I was actually listening to your Future of Education podcast. I don't remember what number it was, but on the HumAIn Podcast, I was listening to it because it seemed very interesting. You were mentioning how K-12 acquired and how it's interesting how the coronavirus pandemic has affected many colleges and how the application of schools and learning is going to change dramatically over the next presumably 10 years or more.
Yeah, I mean, we even hear the thought leaders or the naysayers out there, like the Scott Galloways, who are saying that the university system is definitely changing. And it is true, right? You have these tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 schools. Galvanize, we're in a different space, right? We're focused on postgraduate for both traditional and non-traditional pathways. So you could be a software engineer or a PhD who says, I want to go into full stack. I want to go into a data science career pathway. And these short finishing programs, 3 months in general, will get you polished and get you leveled up. At the same token, the acquisition of us, Galvanize by K-12, makes perfect sense because what we're looking to do is start computer science literacy at an earlier age. And what's interesting is K-12 is the largest charter school provider in the world. They're focused in over 35 states in the United States, all online virtual model since 1999. That's how long they've been at the game. But traditionally, a lot of their students, as we know in the charter school system, are non-traditional backgrounds, which means it might not be a college career pathway. And we think that bridging that gap by starting to learn data skills and software skills as young as kindergarten will be instrumental for the new tech economy and for the new Gen Z and Gen Alpha that are moving into careers of tomorrow.
Gen Alpha. I haven't actually heard that term yet. That's interesting. And well, and not only just untraditional backgrounds, but also untraditional learners as well. It seems that the current education system, I was impacted by this even too, where if someone's not going to learn the same way as everyone else, they're not going to be able to progress or even retain the information that they're learning in the schools. They're going to be left behind. And I know that throughout my years, I actually had a hard time with that because I was more of a kinesthetic learner. I wanted to learn more hands-on or visually, and sitting there reading a textbook never really helped me. And that's what a lot of times we'd be assigned, like textbooks or readings, or even some group work that didn't actually do it. But there's new ways of thinking in the education space, as you know, that are going to really change that, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, sitting and reading a textbook, I'll go so bold as say never helped anybody. Really, the way to learn is project-focused learning or project-based learning, whether that's in science class where you're working with beakers and actually mixing the chemicals, or math class where you're solving the problems, or computer science classes where you are coding. You have to go to that method. We've seen it for a while in the Montessori system where, again, non-traditional schools like that Elon Musk has been launching and others in California and New York. It's all project-based where you get to be creative and create results. My word for 2020 has been create. And that's what I think everyone should be focusing on, especially while you have some of this downtime to recharge, renew, and create your COVID resolution.
You know, speaking of the COVID resolution, you are part of mine, actually, at this point, because I had done about 42 solo cast episodes on the Polycast before I actually had any interviews or having guests on the show. And at this point, I think you're around number 15, 13 or so on the show. And because we had this free time, you might as well take advantage of it and do something new.
Dustin, I love it. You know, for me, it was almost the opposite. The show was very focused on the interview process for HumAIn, and I said, I want to venture out to solo. So I love it. We're taking it in different approaches with the same end in mind.
Exactly. And I really think that audio, I was actually having James Mulvaney, CEO of Podcast.co and Radio.co on, and Matchmaker.fm actually, who was talking about the future of audio. And we were talking about how different things and different platforms are going to change. Recently, Spotify acquired Joe Rogan for their podcasts just because they wanted to have that big name on their channel. And now people are going to start thinking, Spotify is going to be a really platform to be good to be on. So it's interesting how evolving with the medium is going to be a challenge, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the podcast arena, it's gone so far from the 1990s where we had the Leo Laportes and the Kim Commandos with the G4 TV and their Tech Digest channels, which I loved growing up and seeing podcasts for what they were with these RSS feeds, to how they've evolved into primetime television or primetime audio. What's incredible about what Spotify's done is, you know, coming from Sweden to the United States, setting up in one world trade, they've now built not only a music platform for the independent and established artist, but also for the independent and established podcaster. And through their acquisitions of Anchor and Gimlet and others, they've now shown that, look, we are going to take on big names, just like what Apple Movies is doing with Renee Zellweger and others. And they're saying, Joe Rogan, you're going to be our staple, and you're going to be exclusive. And I think that's fantastic for Joe, who's been at it for so many years. You know, a lot of people think he's an instant overnight success, but this guy has been at it since my childhood, and I have such mad props for him. It's similar to the esports world where you see like Ninja, the famous player of Fortnite. People think, oh wow, you became successful here. No, he was playing an additional 10 years earlier through all the Halo franchises, broke and just figuring it out. But it's really great, I think, for the whole industry to show that podcasting is coming of age.
Definitely. And esports is definitely coming of age as well. My real only thing I really absorbed from esports was actually League of Legends and listening to their music. I didn't actually watch many of the competitions, but I always listened to the new songs that came out every year that they had as a way to kind of promote the new competition of that year. And I've seen just how not only the production value has gone up just because they've been able to earn more, but just the actual impact it's had on people and the rise of viewership on it and the changes of the songs, the more motivational they get every single year. It's just interesting how it's evolving alongside that field.
Yeah, and technology's definitely gone international. We've even seen with League of Legends that they were planning to launch their newest app franchise prior to COVID. Of course, Team Tactics still went live during COVID. It's now one of the biggest mobile apps of 2020. Very fun, you know, so definitely if you're a League of Legends fan, please check it out. You get to experience it on mobile. But we're seeing now, I mean, taking data to these e-games, it's a whole new world. Magnus Carlsen, right, famous chess player, trains against AI. Formula One racers are now in the Formula E series where they're competing against AI cars to hone their skills. And we're seeing that as well, as you mentioned, League of Legends, Dota 2, all these Google Fold, Google AI robots are helping people train to be better and to find arbitrage opportunities to crush the competition.
Definitely. And just not only with the AI used in the data science in general, as you know, and as we kind of already alluded to, is definitely going to grow over this next coming decade. What kind of areas or niches do you think that data science is really going to impact?
So where we're already seeing the impact today is both computer vision and natural language processing. So that's any app that you can take an image and video and extract insights, or any text or audio and also extract insights. It's the information that we're normally using our eyes and our ears for, but letting the machine do that. But I think it's going to go so much further than these narrow cases. I think we're moving into platforms. In late 2019, we saw that everything's moving to end-to-end platforms, particularly for the data scientist, the software engineer, the product manager. They can manage the whole workflow with companies like IBM, HP, VMware, Autodesk, scaling all their efforts. Where we're going to be moving, though, is these are not just going to be platforms, but they're going to be services. So will you need a data scientist to code everything from scratch? Not necessarily. And we're starting to see that evolution. I don't think the role's going away. It's just going to be augmented by different platforms and services. And that's a great opportunity so that we can focus on the more cognitively challenging tasks like deploying systems on the edge in devices like the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra or even the iPhone 12, which are hitting the market very shortly.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads into the idea of Internet of Things as well. With the rise of data science and Internet of Things at the same time, it's going to be much bigger of a picture for people to actually analyze, like, hey, what is going on in the macro view? Whereas we haven't really had a lot of insights in that in the past couple decades, even though it has been growing.
Yeah, I mean, because traditionally everything was a closed box. It was a closed loop system where the data lived in some data center in some state without connection to the internet. And I think one of the biggest harbingers of truth or changes in industry we've seen with COVID is the acceleration of the cloud. That's one of my 25 trends for Q2 2020 is the cloud is one of the biggest winners. We've seen with Microsoft Azure, AWS, GCP, IBM, even Alibaba Cloud, just the rise of applications needing support. And that's also going to move into the serverless space where you can spin things up with microservices without eating all that compute time when no one's on your service.
Yeah, definitely. And it kind of makes me think of content management systems and how they might evolve as well.
Yeah, I mean, content management systems, thinking on there, of course, we have like content delivery networks. And I think that's really around like the video and the educational tools. You know, do you have these systems living online all the time or only scaling up as people are using the service? I think that's great. I think also in content management systems, a lot of the content goes back to the two things I shared at the start of these trends is natural language processing. Today, we see a lot of sports books with systems like DraftKings that are automated and written from the machine. We even have in the Wall Street Journal and NASDAQ, they show the daily reports on stocks. These are no longer written by humans. It's mostly machine generated with human oversight to make sure everything matches up and throw some flair for entertainment.
True. And really, too, the changes of learning management systems as well. Considering we were talking about education earlier and how it's going to change a lot online, learning management systems are going to be really more important. And with natural language processing and with the rise of AI, you might be able to start analyzing students' progression and try to manipulate the path that they might have to take to learn a certain skill.
Yeah, and I think of it as adaptive learning. You know, I think you've hinted to this, though. You know, on HumAIn Podcast, I spoke with Daniel 𝗞𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀, who was an early investor in Galvanize from University Ventures, and he speaks a lot about the future of adaptive learning. It's been something that the industry and edtech has been working on adapting to for almost 20 years. Still, the secret sauce has not been discovered, but there is promising results. And it's all about the data. If you can collect data on all different actions and behaviors of a user, you can make more informed insights. We see on the other side of the Rubicon, we see in China companies like Squirrel AI that are creating AI tutors to help enable people to learn Mandarin faster, to pick up English skills or piano lessons. I think we're definitely moving in that direction. It reminds me of, all these fantastic shows like Upload and Westworld, where we just pick up skills based on code. We're going to move there, but that's very transhumanism. I'm not sure if we're there just yet.
Well, that's definitely a topic we could always go into in another day on this podcast. But it's interesting that you mentioned the adaptive learning, because I don't think it's just the data behind it. I also think it's the taxonomies and the organizational structure behind it, which will directly impact the data, which I think still needs to come from humans, because we have to be able to understand how people learn, the pedagogy behind it. So I've actually been trying to work on that through a project called the Modular Degree Framework, where I'm trying to change the way people are approaching learning through either skill tree based learning, where you're having branching paths, or modularity, so people can choose what they're learning as well.
I think what I love about what you're sharing there is thinking about pathways. Yeah. And when you think of a tree, it's only natural to see how it moves off into branches and into leaves and then into these little blossoming flowers. And all of them are pathways to consider. We've seen them with other platforms that have been successful, like lynda.com, that's now LinkedIn Learning, about these pathways. We have them also at Galvanize. I think some of the most successful education entrepreneurs are thinking about, where are you moving in a career, and is it actionable? And I think if that's the case, whether it's modular, like these little finishing things, let's pick up this new language so I can use state of the art, versus the pathway for the career, it's moving you towards a good goal. And those are the goals we have to think about for society, because again, we have over 40 million people right now who are unfortunately furloughed or out of employment. And this is going to present a massive opportunity for reskilling and upskilling and evolving new careers. Yeah. We've seen already where San Francisco and New York City have launched workforce development programs where people like yourself and myself don't pay $1. We reach out to the city, and if we meet the requirements, we can take finishing programs at places like Galvanize and General Assembly for not $1 out of pocket. And I think that's where we might be moving towards, at least in the near term.
Yeah, definitely. I really love that. So kind of pivoting a tiny bit, what is developer education?
Interesting, right? So developer education is education, but for developers. But more specifically, like let's drill down into that. Yeah. It's thinking at anyone who is a developer and what they need. So traditionally, I approach developers from two frames of mind. One is software and the second is data. I think they mend so well together. Yeah. On the software side, you're building applications from the front end and the back end. That could be full stack, that could be cloud native, that could be building up microservices. On the data side, you're enabling those apps to serve information. That could be data analysis, data science, data engineering, or even the predictions on AI. Developer education is anything that falls into those gamuts of application and service-based architecture.
Dang, I love it. That came out of your mouth so fluidly too. That's impressive. And it's one of those things too where, like you said, a lot of people are unemployed or furloughed, and this developer education can help many of them retrain or reskill, because there's a lot of people in the coal industry or in some of these energy plants that are no longer available to actually do those jobs, but they need some kind of new skill that can help keep them going towards the future.
That's right, because digital literacy traditionally is thought about, data entry, Excel spreadsheets, SEO, and digital marketing, but that's just the start. In October 2019, I was at a conference in Korea. I was talking with education leaders in Malaysia, Laos, Vietnam. We were just exploring, what does the future of education look like? And there's several layers, and I think it's really two major phases. First is just digital literacy of, do you have the skills to interact and understand the movement of data and information online? And then secondly, it's, can you enable yourself to create and make that? I go back to my word for 2020, to create digital experiences. And that's really where everyone in these finishing programs are moving towards, getting away from being the end customer to creating the customer experience.
Interesting. And I think that's there's, not to get to transhumanism again or some of the futuristic ideas, but
Let's do it.
there's that worry about how there's going to be the end of jobs where AI and machines can just do all the work for us. But even up until that point, a lot of the jobs we're going to have is going to be more of the creative, like we're talking about here, creating something, creating a podcast, creating some kind of new program for data science to actually use and execute. So there's still going to be a role for humans to play even down the line through this creative endeavors.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the phrase end of jobs, and one of my friends, Taylor Pearson, came out with that book, The End of Jobs, and it's so interesting because we were exploring this in 2015 about what does the end of jobs mean, and it sounds so startling, but I think the end is a beginning. It's like a phoenix, rising from the ashes, and that's what we've seen throughout society. I mean, let's think back to before our time, right? Electricity, 1918, it spawned so many new industries. Even in the 1980s, right? The internet, boom. The computer, boom, right? Blockchain, well, maybe, right? Some of these we have to see where they pan out, but they can spawn so much creation and ingenuity. I think in the data and AI world, what's going to happen is we're going to have so many endpoints. Today, we only have a couple or maybe a dozen connected devices in our flats or houses. We're going to have, fast forward to 2030, looking at that vision, 100 plus devices all connected to fiber and 5G or even 6G internet by that point. I mean, so much data is going to be moving, and that means there's going to be a lot of jobs to manage these services and ensure we get phenomenal customer experiences.
Definitely. And not to delve too much into customer experience, but I think that's a field that's really underdeveloped. Many companies have been outsourcing it, and because of that, the actual service is actually lacked. I've had terrible customer service experiences over the years purely because of this, and that they had lacked the data on like what actions have I taken that caused this, or what actions could be done to fix this. Purely, you can't see that without the data, as you're saying. And so I think that whole field will evolve as well.
Yeah, and I mean, customer experience, I mean, you can get me started here where I think one of the biggest areas we've all been irate at one period of time has been with our telephone or internet companies. And, it has changed. We have now a big organization in New York City called ASAP. That's ASAPP. They recently raised a $185 million round to bridge the gap of those experiences. What that means is next time you call in on Verizon or Time Warner and you're sharing something, I guarantee you when they say this call is being monitored for quality assurance, it's being monitored and live transcribed and live sentiment analysis based on all your prior information history to give real-time recommendations to solve your problems and minimize how expensive you are for the company. That's happening today in 2020. So customer experience has become customer success, but it's also company success.
Yeah. Well, and I think some people will hear that and kind of be like, oh, I don't want my data being used in that way. But yeah, you do. You want this experience to be quick as possible, not only for the company's sake, but for your sake. And so the more data they have on you, the quicker they can, hey, you had this situation before. This is the solution we had to use problem. It was a few years ago, but we still had the same problem. Let's try to fix it. Now let's try to fix it to not happen again.
Yeah, and some experiences require human interaction on the phone, and some can be by chat. I mean, one of the things that I really love that a lot of companies have taken on are chatbots. We've come of age with chatbots. They only started around 2015, but today, if you're with American Express, Amazon, Macy's, any of these companies, you don't have to call the phone. You have your chatbot on your Google Chrome on one browser. You're doing your other tasks in the other browser, and you got your refund. You got your order reshipped. It's fantastic. Removing the hassle. That is what we need to do with customer experience or customer success, is when customers don't have a hassle, they're happy. And then that's creating companies like Zappos, which is loved for their customers, and Chewy for the dogs. I mean, it's just an incredible night and day experience when you work with Chewy or you work with a company that doesn't have those services.
Well, and it's interesting with chatbots is that there's still a ways to go, but if you use a lot of NLP and making sure that like TensorFlow is a good way to actually do it, obviously for those who are listening though. But I've noticed a lot of chatbots that act like they're more smart than they are, and then that ends up being more of a hassle than anything. But then there's some companies that have spent a lot of time in developing those use cases for these bots and started building these actual smartness, I guess you could say, the intelligence of it, and that's helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's new open source frameworks like Rasa, which people are using to build chatbots. Facebook open sourced 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗲, so you could build your own into a website or a messenger bot as well. And there's all these new frameworks. As you mentioned with TensorFlow, you can use BERT and all these technologies to create the text. I mean, we saw breakthroughs in 2019 that now when you have an Amazon, one of those devices, don't want mine to go off here, but when you speak to that device, now they have certain chatbot competitions they had that can fool the human for up to 10 minutes, which shows how clever and effective they've gotten. But it really comes down to training data, all these conversations, all this text, and all these utterances in different tones and languages. It's all about the data, and for any system to scale, we have to train it. And that's the challenge, especially here in America. We are all about data privacy. And some other countries like China, it's a different situation. So we have to see, what fights do we want to take, and where is it going to lead us for the long bets?
Yeah. I wish we could, as users, teach the devices more. Like just earlier today, I asked Google, I hope it doesn't set anybody off, but I asked my device to actually just do something for me real quick. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a simple request like, hey, can you take this small action? And yet it just couldn't figure it out when I just assumed that it would be able to. And I wish I could program it either verbally or even through TensorFlow on my computer or something like that to actually do something like that.
And the beauty is that you can, both through the Amazon and Google devices, they now have these connectors that if you are an app developer, you can connect to their other services and have integrations. We're moving as an industry, fascinatingly, into a splintering of either code or no code, right? We got these data scientists, PhDs who are going all in on building custom systems. And the same end, you can now use services like AWS and GCP where you can connect them without ever touching code. You even have now really fun integrations like Airtable and Zapier and Glide and Bubble and all these tools that let people build websites without ever touching code. But don't be fooled, there's really smart people like Dustin and I behind the scenes who've been coding the whole system to make it work smoother.
Well, to be honest with you, I actually don't know how to code very much. But yes, I'll take that compliment any day.
Well, you mentioned TensorFlow, so it sounds like you're definitely on your way up.
I've definitely gone into a deep research into many different areas. Even though I don't know how to actually code it myself, I've tried to take a very macro view of all the different languages and try to learn. Because I thought, too, when it comes to learning to code, not to go on a little tangent, but everyone's different. Their interest for code is going to be different. The reason why they're going to learn it is going to be different. And I think in order to actually get to learning it, you have to find something that's worthwhile enough to you, like maybe building a website and starting off high level, or perhaps you want to make a game. So learning like C++ or something like that and trying to find that why. And that's what's going to motivate you into doing it.
Yeah, and I think everyone can learn to code. My dad, who's now in his late 60s, picked up coding in his mid 60s. That's after, of course, being an engineer who was repairing televisions and DVD players for many years. But what we're seeing is that anyone can learn to code, but a recent statistic from MIT that came out in 2017, what it said is, what's the big difference? Can kids at 5 or 10 learn better than people in their 50s? Let's debunk this or demystify this once for all. And what was discovered is we have the same propensity to learn at any of these ages, but as we get older, we have more responsibilities and more distractions and less time on our hand. And that's really why we're seeing kids at young ages learning to code better or learn languages better. It's not that they can, it's that we're just too busy.
Yeah. I also believe there's a bit of a psychological aspect behind it. We're inhibiting ourselves, not because we can't do it, like you're saying. Technically speaking, our the neuroscience behind it, basically, the neuroplasticity, is plenty malleable to actually learn it. But through our busyness and of our lives or through this other obligations, we think to ourselves, oh, I don't have the time to do it. But it takes 20 minutes a day, an hour a day, just consistent practice to actually get down to it.
Yeah, and I mean, right now I say as we're living in this COVID quarter, if any of your listeners, the polymaths of the show, are saying, can I code? I say, yes, now is the time. It's the best time ever. You should start setting that COVID resolution. And, resolutions or goals, they don't take that long. They take about 21 days to build into a habit. And if you start there, you can really do anything. Just start one thing at a time.
Well, and they say that Josh Kaufman had a TED Talk about how it takes 20 hours to actually learn a skill at a basic level. 20 hours to learn a language, and then 21 days of building that habit would be plenty of, it's not that hard is what we're saying.
Well, with 20 hours, you can be very proficient in TensorFlow. I will tell you that.
Well, and then that kind of leads into the whole idea of future of education and future of work. I'm not sure which one you're really interested to keep going on, but I think the quarantine itself, like we've been saying over and over again, great opportunity to look at how work is going to develop, how our education is going to be going towards. What do you think?
Well, I think we're having a big shift in both future of work and future of education. The education's the one that we're seeing more in the near term because a lot of people are out of work. So we're seeing the tier 1 schools, like, of course, the Harvards and Columbias, doing fine but discounting their services. A lot of these tier 2, tier 3 schools are going to change. We're looking at fall 2020. What do openings look like? And there's been some drastic changes in education. The California state system said we are banishing requirements for the SAT and ACT. If you're a high school student, you no longer need this to get into college. We're seeing across the board that also college students or grads who are looking to go into graduate school, the GRE and GMAT has become optional. So it's really interesting that you wonder, why are countries changing this with their colleges? Is it a result of policy? Like, this is the uncommon method for schools that we're moving towards? Or is there something about capitalism behind the scenes that's running that and changing that gamut as well? That's the belief of Scott Galloway, that the capitalism's there. And I somewhat think that, but I think it's interesting because it's going to create actually more accessible and equitable outcomes.
Something that you just kind of spawned an idea from is that I was learning about universal learning points, a kind of concept where we could, instead of having college credits based off of these accreditation boards that are taking a long time to go through the process and stuff like that, we could use data science as a way to measure how well is this course or educational material actually teaching the subject well to the learner, and then using that to develop a universal learning system. What is your thoughts on that?
So I think what I'm hearing from a universal learning system is it is very project-based, but it's seeing, where are we having success points or opportunity points with different learners, and are people reaching the same blockers? And if so, something's got to change, either the approach or the pedagogy. I think that's very important. I think everyone can learn with the same pathway, maybe different strategies to get there. And those strategies, I think, is mostly about motivation and inspiration, so people can put in the hard work. When you look at some of the most successful people in the world, like, for example, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, what have they done? They have spent years and years reading. And how much reading is that? Is it a page a day? I remember hearing this conversation about Charlie Munger that he puts in something of over 700 pages a week of reading financial reports, market reports, company reports. He's committed to consistent education.
Yeah.
Education isn't just a 4-year degree. It's a continual lifelong process. And I think those learning points tie in very well to that.
Definitely. I totally agree 100%. Lifelong process. And the greatest people, like you're saying, like financial experts like them, or even Leonardo da Vinci, or people of just renown in the past 100 years, Steve Jobs, for example, they've all attributed lifelong learning in some capacity towards their success.
Yeah, I mean, it's you learn from both what other people have done that's been successful or not so successful, and you learn from your own experience. I'm a big believer of leaning forward, right? And leaning forward is not like leaning in. Leaning forward means you're leaning forward into whatever happens, and that could be failure, and you have to pivot and adapt to that. The challenge is we come from a world where fear and flight and fight is everything that is occurring each and every day. But if you can drop these barriers, let go of the mentality that's holding you back, and realize that everything is just a behavior and these are patterns that you can solve through, That's what we do in data science. We're solving through patterns. We're discovering patterns in the data so that there's obviously some outcome. Make more money, reduce costs, improve customer experience. And I think the same thing happens in life, that you have to learn, have to be willing to step back on all experience.
Yeah, definitely. I was just entranced by that statement you just made there. And it's crazy how, first off, similar we are, which is awesome that I was able to get you on the podcast here. Where do you see data science in general being impacted for your life? Where do you want it to lead you?
So where we are in 2020 is data scientists are still coding, right? These platforms are emerging and there's new techniques being found like ethical data science and how do you integrate design thinking into the processes. But if we're looking outward, I mean, this is like future of work. Like where will we be in Vision 2030? I'll start there. I think in 2030, we're going to be to a point where most of the data science pipeline can be streamlined and automated, and then the humans are going to augment with the insights. So I imagine in 2030, you have data sets, it's all in the system, and I'm coming here to extract the information to say, yes, here's 20 recommendations from the AI. This is what the AI says is best. Let me talk with other humans. Let me talk with other AIs, and then let's implement a solution. I mean, that's what we've seen in season 3 of Westworld with Dolores, right? And the whole organization, without giving any spoilers, is this massive supercomputer that basically predicts different pathways. We're getting there as soon as we connect all the devices.
Yeah.
I think by 2030, we're going to start seeing that. Will we see an Maya type device like what we see in devs where it's quantum and everything is deterministic? I don't think by 2030.
Yeah.
I don't even know if in my lifetime, because there is so much capacity for us to have will and for will to be stricken by emotions and feelings. And emotions and feelings is the love of what is being human. It is always changing. And that means, well, it's not that predictable. Even as much as we can measure, there's all these startups I've seen recently that have said, oh, we can measure, all the levels in your saliva and your cortisol, so we can tell you what you're going to do before you do it. I will believe it when I see it, yeah. Right? And so, let's see that science come to life. But I think it's definitely going to be everywhere. There's a reason why everyone's saying that data science is the job of the 21st century. But I think beyond that, it's future-proofing careers, and that is continuing to learn. I recently spoke with Chris Bishop, who launched the Future-Proofing Your Career in Data Science on LinkedIn Learning, and we were talking about his career as he navigated 8 careers through his journey, from musician to director of marketing at IBM to consulting and many others. And the biggest thing is having that neuroplasticity, being willing to have these open conversations, be willing to learn and have that growth mindset. So I think data science will be here to stay. It's just going to keep transforming. And that's the fun of any tech industry, seeing how it's becoming more advanced.
Mm-hmm. You got me so excited there. I keep pointing at the screen, at the camera, because I'm just like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. I hope it doesn't seem rude if they just see it on the camera that I'm just pointing here at David. But yeah, if you can introduce me to him too, that'd be really great. I'm not be able to have him on the show, because that's kind of the same idea that I'm trying to apply with this Polymath Polycast here, because lifelong learning is a very important aspect, but then there's also the actual width of learning. How many pillars or branches that we can talk about earlier are you really going into? How deep are you going into those branches, and how many of them are you really pursuing? You don't have to pursue all of them at once, but being a polymath just means that you're skilled, highly skilled in multiple different areas. Like your friend there, musician now, and data, and just all these different skills he's had over his lifetime. He is a polymath, from what you explained to me there, purely because of that concept.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely explore many different branches of the width of the tree, but it's important to note that, exploring them all at the same time is as good as exploring none of them at the same time. So it's important to focus in when you're learning something, and there's been so many studies on this that, if you pick only 2 or 3 things to learn a year, you learn them so great. I mean, you have so many years to keep picking 2 or 3 things rather than 20 things at the same time. So it's very important to focus in, have that concentrated focus. That gives you the time to discover and become an expert at your craft.
They often say, there's a quote that goes around, is that people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they often underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I think you could apply learning to that. People overestimate how much you can learn in 1 year's time span, but imagine what a decade of learning could be like. Now, one thing I ask all my guests is, what is a polymath to you? So I really want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, let me first comment on the previous thing, and then I'll definitely share that as well. So first off, I completely take that right back to data science and AI, that, we overestimate in 1 year, we're going to have AGI, we're going to have like these incredible AI debaters, but we underestimate, in 20 years, like maybe we'll have self-driving car there, right? But maybe we're going to be there in 5 years, right? And actually, we already have self-driving cars. So it is incredible that our intuition on long bets is not always spot on, but that's why it's good to explore those long bets. What's a polymath? I think a polymath is like anyone in anything, someone who knows and is willing to explore a lot on many subjects. We can look at language learning, for example. We have people who can speak 5, 6+ languages. We have people who can code 5 or 6+ languages. But what they've done is they found what is similar among all these different languages is there's still a process. If you're coding in Python or R, you're still coding, you're still building functions, you're still doing analysis. There's some different little squiggly parentheses. There's some different names of these underscores, but they're really just the same thing. And that's why it's so translatable across what you do. And I think polymaths are able to translate these results across different technologies, across different industries. That's what makes them successful.
Love it. And that's why I love asking that question too, because each person that answers it says it in a different way, or says something even new that I have never thought about before. Although I have always thought about that translating concept. That's a true beauty of learning. One thing you mentioned earlier is that when someone's learning something and they're having difficulty, it's usually something to do like motivation, or the strategy behind that learning needs to change. Over my years as in the workforce has been mostly teaching swimming. So I've been an instructor of how people can actually move through the water in multiple different ways. And oftentimes my job is not to actually teach them how to swim, it's to teach them how to do a certain concept. And if that doesn't work for them, to find a new strategy or create a new strategy to actually teach that concept to their brain, their specific mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. You don't get backstroke the first time. Oh, give up. What are you talking about? Keep trying it, right? Maybe it's your arms are not as long as someone else's body. Maybe you have a stitch in your right rib, right? Maybe something's going on that you got to warm up more, try something different, or be motivated, right? You're not going to get the first time. Some of the world-class players, people think that they are just brilliant and born that way. But you look at some of these amazing players, especially we go back to tennis. Again, my favorite sport, we look at Rafael Nadal, right? Famous, #1 in the world. And I've watched videos of him playing in Mallorca, and he still trains dozens of hours, every month. And he's doing that into his 30s, right? He did not stop there. To be world #1 is one thing, to stay world #1 is another. And whether we look at sports like chess, or we with Magnus Carlsen, or tennis like Rafa Nadal, or even, Formula One, we're seeing just an incredible variety of champions who have a passion and commitment to what they do. And I'm sure that goes similar to swimming, right? We can see Michael Phelps, we can see Dara Torres and others who've excelled in that space.
You beat me to it too, because I was just thinking in this response to what you were saying, I was trying to active listen to everything you said, but one thing that came up just like right there prominent was Michael Phelps. Right before you said, I was like, yeah, Michael Phelps is one of those people who consistently practices all the time. Kevin Hart, or Michael Jordan, and even the late Kobe Bryant, they all are people who spent countless hours towards their craft and really try to be amazing at it. And it's interesting how you were talking about earlier too, they see these people as like overnight successes, how their first win was like, oh man, they're overnight success, but they've been practicing for a decade beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, we can just name it in so many industries, but it's like even like Lewis Hamilton from Formula One. I mean, he was just added and on the podium with all his friends and through, Formula 4 to 3 to 2, getting up to 1. And that process has not always been wins. Even now with 6+ world championships, it's been a journey, and I'm sure 2020, when the new season 3 of Formula Drive to Succeed or Thrive comes on Netflix, we're going to see how that industry has changed, like all sports. And I think one thing we've seen in this COVID quarter, and I'm so looking forward to seeing the outcomes when sports returns, right, on the racetrack and on the court, is which teams are going to thrive, which teams have taken this stressful, unprecedented moment in history and made the most of it. We've seen in Los Angeles, right, Kobe Bryant's area that he spent a lot of work, and a lot of his players who worked with him on the team are consistently training at their home gyms at different areas, keeping up their routines. Look, I'm not an all-star basketball player. I have mad respect for the sport and love it. But I'll tell you, even during this COVID quarter, I've been all in on working out. I brought back those Insanity Max 30 and P90X tapes and been at it day in, day out, because I know when it emerges, we don't need just a beach body. We need a body for peak performance in our body and our minds.
Definitely. And that's a whole nother subject for having you on again the next time. I feel like we barely touched any of the questions today, and I don't want to keep you too past your time there. So we're going to end up wrapping up here. Overall, the mindset we've employed today has been very communicative and open. And I think we've kind of shared the same ideas about how lifelong learning is important, the evolution of data science, and really those two in relation to each other. I'm curious to see what you say the next time I have you on. Where can people find you online, especially your podcast too, no less?
Yeah, I mean, beyond listening here, for all the listeners, you can check out HumAIn Podcast. It's at HumAIN podcast.com, and through that, all the platforms. I come out with a monthly reports as well. 4 of the most recent ones I released was Design Thinking Standards for Data Science, a data science workflow skeleton for building projects, bouncing back from COVID-19 if you are currently unemployed or furloughed, and the top data science and AI trends for Q2 2020. They're all available on HumAINPodcast.com, and these are all free to help everyone learn and be empowered.
I love it. I might have to steal the idea of doing those like reports at the end of the season or something like that. I saw that you're a few seasons in too, no less. That's awesome. I'll make sure I have links in the description for anybody who's interested. And what do you think should be the call to action for our audience today?
My biggest call to action is, if you're someone who's been impacted by COVID, know that it will get better, but it takes action from your part to have that change. Don't rely on the unemployment money that we're seeing from the government here today. See how you can future-proof your career. There's many ways you can do that. It might be a boot camp with an income sharing agreement. It might be with a workforce agreement in your local municipality or domicile. Please check in there and see. There's so much money from the CARES Act and the HEROES Act that are being passed to help reskill and upskill the workforce, and this is for free. It is no longer just with loans and Pell Grants. There's going to be new opportunity on the horizon. Make the most of your time. You know, if today you can start learning something new, see what it is, and maybe it's code or maybe it's growth mindset, but be consistent. Like Dustin shared, 20 hours is all you need, or 21 days of basically an hour a day is 20 hours, right? That's all you need to get this change here, to be proficient, and it's important. I wish everyone, you stay healthy, be well during this time. Know that we are reimagining the economy. We're reimagining education, and I want you to be part of that, to know that I think the United States is going to come out stronger, but it's going to require each and every one of us to do so.
It's amazing the way you're conveying that mindset and that overall optimism is fantastic. Thank you for being on the show. I love the points you made today. I love the way we were kind of going on tangents about just interests we had. There's so much more we can go on, so I look forward to having you on again. Thanks again.